I'm gonna roll down the road today, the same section of road that I rode yesterday with my older brother Keith, and unfortunately Keith crashed on this last section of road that we're going to roll down. And what I wanted to do is go back and recreate the crash and see if there's anything that you guys can learn from the crash. I know there is. It's rhetorical. I know that there's something that everybody can learn from this crash. I just wanted to maybe recreate the crash in a different way. Hopefully that's helpful for everybody to learn from. The odd thing is, he crashed yesterday. The day before this, I actually released a video yesterday, the day before in the morning, identifying this very same crash and talking about the apprehension that I had riding with my two brothers. Keith is a new rider. He's never really ridden. I don't think he's got more than 10 miles on his bike until yesterday. So he's possibly the most dangerous motorcycle rider there is, to himself and others. A new rider, and he hasn't had much training other than what I've given him, which is very little. In addition, he bought the wrong bike. He bought one of the worst bikes you can buy as a new rider. It's heavy, it's got way too much power, it doesn't have very good suspension, no good ergonomics, it's not a comfortable bike. The only thing it's got going for it, it's got pretty good brakes, pretty good tires, and that's it. It's a horrible bike for a first time rider. I don't make judgments about the other stuff, brand and all that, but it's a terrible bike. I rode it before we rode, and we're coming up on the first real turn here. This is a curvy road, but this is the first semi-dangerous turn, mainly because it's a bad intersection right here. But then we start going down into the quicker turns at going down this hill. And if you can't tell by now, this section right here gets pretty fast. I've run this section of road at 70 plus miles an hour, and you know, it's dangerous at that speed. The speed limit here is 35. This is probably the fastest section we did right here, and I slowed down. Was probably doing less than 60 here, I'm sure. And then right here, you know, you start getting into these turns here, and you got to really pay attention, because you can't really see the road. You can't see where the turns are. You're going over hills. You're unloading and loading the suspension. There's a lot of problems in this section right here. So it's a good thing to go really slow, and which I was. I was more afraid of him running off in this section of road than anywhere else on the ride we did yesterday. So I was going very slow, probably about this speed here, which is totally manageable, especially if you've got a rider in front of you where you can see where the rider is going over, where he's turning, body position, lane position, how the rider in front sets up for the turn, kind of prepares you for the turn. And that's kind of what my point was yesterday. Keith just kind of laid it on me while I was over visiting, that he was going for a ride, and I told him to wait for me. And you know, I've been terrified of Keith getting on a bike. I've tried for the last couple of years to talk him out of riding a motorcycle, because I know exactly how dangerous it is. I know how inattentive my brother is overall. He just doesn't pay that much attention to the road, and he's gotten us lost so many times just because he's not paying attention. He's focused on other things, and it's very dangerous. You can't do that on a motorcycle, and ride very safely. So it's always been a concern since he's been talking about riding, and I've been trying for the last couple of years to talk him out of it. But once I became convinced that he was going to get a motorcycle one way or the other, I tried to help him. And one of the things I tried to do is help him get a reasonable motorcycle for a beginner. I tried to talk him into a dual sport. He even looked at several dual sports, and didn't find the right deal. He was trying to get the cheapest one out there, which was almost always a bad idea. But he wound up getting a really cheap Harley Sportster, and the bike was in pretty good condition. So, you know, I didn't have a huge problem against it. I was just like, this is the worst bike you possibly could have gotten. You know, the only thing that probably would have been worse is a Gold Wing or a bigger Harley. So, of course, you get the, you know, that thing's probably 600 plus pounds, twice the size of the bike that I would recommend. Even though it's one of the smaller Harleys. Still, it's just a horrible bike. But regardless, he made the choice he did, and I've tried. Well, I took him for, you know, some basic parking lot skill training. Gymkhana is what we call it. I'll link the video up here. Anyway, that's kind of how the day started yesterday, and we got out on this, and you know, the whole time he's riding safely, good distance behind me, moderate speeds, because I was concerned. I didn't want him to become another statistic, and so we got on this section of road right here, and about this time there was a car that came up, and you know, we were going so slow, in fact, that a car was riding on his butt for probably the last couple of miles. And we're coming up on the turn. The one thing I am concerned about is I feel like maybe the right turn that I was going to make up here kind of snuck up on me, and I hit my blinker probably right in the left turn that we were both making, and that may have distracted him. He's easily distracted, so I don't know. But I came back yesterday and tried to reconstruct it with my little brother, and wound up being quite surprised at what I saw. The turn I remember looking up was quite different than the one that I rode down coming back. I was quite surprised at how far around the turn that he made it. I thought he just went straight. I thought he just locked it up in the turn and went straight off the road. But it looked like he was halfway through the turn before he lost control. And I'm still trying to figure out how he did that. I'm still a little bit confused on how you can go through half the turn and then go straight off the road. Maybe I could figure that out today, but I'm about to put the camera outside the sunroof and see if I can get a better sense of what happened here. So we're a few hundred yards away from the turn where he went off the road, and this is a very common occurrence. This is probably one of the most frequent crashes that there is. I'm calling it a panic. He grabbed a bunch of brake and locked his rear up, at least. And this is the turn. Just after he starts the turn, he goes straight towards that telephone pole. And every indication is that he locked the rear brake. And that's what I'm going to talk about in a future video. And this is some of the aftermath. I apologized when I pulled out the camera and told him I was going to film, and he understands. That's what I do. I document. And it's good to get some of the aftermath and see where the bike actually landed, and this is pretty close to where he landed too. And the response time was fantastic. I mean, almost all these vehicles here were here within 10 minutes on the scene. And that's where he left the road, right there where that muddy patch starts. And doesn't look like much, but he hit pretty hard. 3 ribs, and a broken scapula, and a deflated lung. Got the wrong bike loaded up, and we're going to do some crash forensics over here. We're trying to recreate maybe what has happened, because Keith doesn't really know what happened. All we know for sure is that he ran off the road about where Mark is standing. But it looked like he was well into the turn, so he was making the turn no problem. And his comments to me were, I have no idea what happened. All I know is the bike wasn't responding. That was his comment. So it looks like maybe he was making the turn fine, coming down this way, and then left the road right here, which kind of...
Here's the only pavement skid I see right here. Crossing that, and that's right in line right there.
Yeah, that looks like chip.
Yeah, but you don't see that?
Well, it wasn't much. The chirp, it was just a chirp.
Right here.
What I heard was just a chirp. Like maybe he kicked it into too low of a gear and let the clutch out and like that. That's what I heard.
And then you skip.
And then I looked behind me to see if he was going to make the turn, because I thought, okay, well, maybe he was coming in too fast. And then looks like maybe he bounced off the pavement and probably locked it up here. That is his tread, and that makes me think
he let off of the brake right there.
No, I think that's where he grabbed a handful. I think he grabbed a handful of the front.
The front, okay.
And the front end went down, and he went left shoulder first.
Yep.
Ass over tea kettle, and he landed face down.
So he rode the bike all the way to the stop, and
I don't know how. All I know is I think he went down right here. I think this big gouge right here is the side of the bike. That's probably the foot peg digging in. It probably just snapped right there. And he's probably...
Well, this is where the foot peg snapped.
You know, that's where his foot peg fell off. Yeah, maybe that's front tire. I don't know. Let's pick up some of this trash now.
And this was the little bump. Boom.
I'm pretty sure this is where the bike landed, and Keith was over here somewhere laying face down, and he wasn't moving.
He probably rolled off of it.
He wasn't moving. You know, I was real hopeful though, because it didn't look like a bad crash. You know, if you're gonna crash, might as well crash onto a golf course, and that's pretty much what he did.
Yeah.
So after my little brother and I got the bike loaded up and cleaned up the yard and fixed some of the grass that was destroyed, we did a little brief walk around and a survey of and some speculation about what happened and how it could have happened. But I came back today and shot some more video and did a little bit more in depth, and that's what I want to share with you in the next video, is a little bit more accurate representation with maybe some graphics. I spent some more time to do that, so you'll get to see some much greater detail about what happened. And I'll explain exactly what happened and how that could happen to you if you're not careful.